So this video is for those of you who are studying for the pre-algebra final exam. So this is basically a multiple choice review, or you can think of it like a practice test. So let's start with number 1. Which of the following is equivalent to the expression shown below? So we need to be familiar with order of operations. Perhaps you are familiar with the expression PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So we need to start with the operation inside the parentheses. 9 minus 5 is 4. Now here's a question. Should we divide first or should we add first? Should we do 24 divided by 4 or 4 plus 3? Comparing division and addition, division has higher priority than addition. So on the left, the letters on the left have more priority than the ones on the right. So division has more priority over addition. So we need to divide first before adding. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So this is what we have. Now, we don't want to do 6 plus 3. We need to work with the exponents before we add. So what is 4 squared? 4 squared means that we're multiplying 2 4s. 4 times 4 is 16. Now what's 3 times 16? 3 times 16 is, 3 times 10 is 30. 3 times 6 is 18. 30 plus 18 is 48. And then 6 plus 48 is 54. So therefore, E is the right answer for the first problem. Number 2. If A is equal to 3 and B is equal to negative 4, what is the value of the expression shown below? So what we need to do is we need to replace the variables with the numbers that they correspond to. So A is 3 and B is negative 4. So this is what we have. So let's start with this. What is negative 4 to the second power? So this means that we're multiplying two negative 4's together. A negative times a negative is a positive number. So that becomes 16. So we have 3 minus, and then replace that with 16. Now 3 to the third power. If we multiply 3 3's together, what's the answer? 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So 3 to the third power is 27. 3 minus 16 is negative 13. And 4 times 27. 4 times 20 is 80. 4 times 7 is 28. 80 plus 28 is 108. Now what is the absolute value of negative 13? The absolute value of negative 13 is positive 13. And so now we have 2 times 13, which is 26. So what is 26 plus 108? So if we do long addition, 8 plus 6 is 14. 1 plus 2 is 3. So this gives us 134. So once again, E is the answer. Number 3, solve for x. So what do we need to do in order to solve this equation? In order to find the value of x, we need to get x by itself on one side of the equation. So that means the 3 and the 7, somehow we need to move it to the other side. So notice that 7 is added to 3x. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So to get rid of the 7 on the left side, we need to subtract both sides by 7. Positive 7 and negative 7 adds to 0. We can bring down the 3x. And then on the right, we have 19 minus 7, which is 12. Now how do we separate the 3 from the x? Notice that the 3 is multiplied to the x. So what operation is opposite to multiplication? The opposite of multiplication is division. So we need to divide both sides by 3. 3x divided by 3 will give us 1x, which is the same as x. On the right, 12 divided by 3 is 4. So the answer is x is equal to 4. So D is the right answer choice. Number 4, perform the indicated operation. So how can we add two fractions with different denominators? In order to add the two fractions, we need to get the same denominator. A simple way to do this is to multiply the first fraction by the other denominator, or by the denominator of the second fraction. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 7. And then to multiply the second fraction by the denominator of the first. Whatever you do to the top, you must also do to the bottom. So if you multiply the numerator by 5, you must multiply the denominator by 5. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 5 is 35. 2 times 5 is 10. So now that we have the same denominator, we can now add the numerators of the two fractions. So 21 plus 10 is 31. Therefore, the final answer is answer choice B. It's 31 over 35. So that's how we can add or even subtract two fractions. It's by finding the common denominator and then adding or subtracting the numerators. By the way, for each of these problems, I recommend that you pause the video and try each problem yourself. And then once you finish working on it, play the video to see if you have the right answer. So now let's work on number 5. Find the missing side length of the triangle. So we have two sides of the triangle, but we need to find the third side. What is the value of x in this problem? We need to use something called Pythagorean's theorem, which states that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So a and b are the side lengths of, or you could say the legs of the right triangle. So x can be considered as a, b can be 15. C is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the longest side of the triangle. In this case, C is 17. C is always across the 90-degree right angle, which is represented by the red box. So we're going to replace A with X, and let's replace B with 15. And let's replace C with 17. So all we need to do is solve for X. 17 squared, or 17 times 17, that's going to be 289. 15 times 15 is 225. So right now we have x squared plus 225 is equal to 289. In order to calculate the value of x, we need to get x by itself. So we need to subtract both sides by 225. So what is 289 minus 225? 5 minus 9 is 4, 8 minus 2 is 6, and 2 minus 2 is 0, so we get 64. Now, if x squared is equal to 64, what is x? So now we need to take the square root of both sides. So what is the square root of 64? What number times itself is 64? Well, we know that 8 times 8 is 64. So the square root of 64 is 8, which means C is the right answer. Number 6. What is the value of y in the equation shown below? So here we have an equation with a fraction. So what can we do in order to solve for y? Well, first, we could get rid of the 3 on the left side. So let's begin by subtracting both sides by 3. 3 and negative 3 will cancel. So we're going to have y over 4 is equal to, now what is negative 5 minus 3? If you're not sure, you can create a number line. Let's say this is 0 and this is negative 5. So starting from negative 5, we want to subtract it by 3. When you're adding, travel to the right of the number line. When you're subtracting, go to the left. So because we want to subtract negative 5 by 3, we need to travel 3 spaces to the left. So this is negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. So negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8. So what do we do at this point? We have y over 4 is equal to negative 8. So this basically means that y is divided by 4. So the opposite of division is multiplication. To get rid of the 4, we need to multiply both sides by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So they cancel on the left. So y is going to be equal to negative 8 times 4, which is negative 32. So A is the right answer. Number 7. What is the greatest common factor of the two monomials shown below? So how can we do this? First, we need to expand each monomial. 35 is 7 times 5. A squared is A times A. B cubed is B times B times B. Basically 3 B's multiplied to each other. Now the other monomial, 42A cubed B, we can write that as 7 times 6. Now 6, we can change that to 3 times 2. A to the third is basically multiplying 3 A variables together, and then we have a B. So now that we've expanded the two monomials, can you identify what is the greatest common factor? 7 is a common factor of both monomials. Another common factor is A squared. They both contain at least 2 A variables. Another factor is B. So combining these, we're going to get the greatest common factor, which has a 7, 2 A's, and a B. So A times A is A squared. So thus we have 7A squared B. So that is the GCF, or the greatest common factor, between these two monomials. That's how you can find it. Number 8, multiply. So what is 4A squared B cubed times 7A cubed B to the 5th power? So first we need to multiply 4 and 7. 4 times 7 is 28. Now what is A squared times A cubed? A squared times A cubed is A to the 5th power. You need to add 2 and 3 to get 5. A squared means that we're multiplying 2 A's together. A cubed means that we're multiplying 3 A variables together. So in total, we have 5 A variables. Now for the next one, B to the 3rd times B to the 5th. We need to add the exponents. 3 plus 5 is 8. So it's B to the 8th power. So the final answer is 25. I mean, not 25, but 28. A to the 5th power, B to the 8th power. Number 9, divide. So what is 56, A to the 7th, B to the 3rd, C to the negative 5 divided by 72, A to the 3rd, B to the 8th, C to the negative 4? So how can we divide these two monomials together? Well, first, let's break up 56 and 72. 56 is basically 8 times 7, and 72 is 8 times 9. So we could cancel the 8's. Now, let's divide A to the 7 by A to the 3rd. What do we do with the exponents when we're dividing common bases together? We need to subtract the exponents. So it's going to be 7 minus 3, which is 4. Another way you could think about it is if we expand A to the 7th, we have 7 A variables. If we expand A to the 3rd, that will give us 3 A variables. We could cancel 3 A variables on top and on the bottom. So notice that we have 4 A variables left over. So A to the 7 divided by A to the 3rd is A to the 4th power. So initially, we're going to write our answer on top. Now what about the next one? What is B to the 3rd divided by B to the 8th power? So we need to subtract. we need to start with the top exponent 3 and subtract it by the bottom exponent 8. So it's 3 minus 8, which is negative 5. Now we can write this as b to the negative 5 over 1. If we get a negative exponent, what should we do? We need to make it positive. And the way to do that is to take the b variable, move it to the bottom. And so the negative exponent becomes a positive exponent. So this is 1 over b to the 5th power. And to explain it, let's expand b to the 3rd power. So b to the 3rd power is 3 b variables multiplied to each other. B to the 8th is basically 8 b variables. So we could cancel 3 on top, 3 on the bottom, which means that we have 5 b variables, but notice where it's located, on the bottom of the fraction. So we can put b to the 5th at the bottom here. Now what about the last part? C to the negative 5th power divided by c to the negative 4th power. So first, let's subtract. Let's start with the top exponent and then subtract it by the bottom exponent. So what is negative 5 minus the bottom exponent of negative 4? What do you do when you have two negative signs next to each other? A negative times a negative is a positive number. So we can convert this to a plus. So what is negative 5 plus 4? So imagine if you're on a number line and you're starting at negative 5. If you travel 4 units to the right, what number will you get? Negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. So right now, we have c to the negative 1 power. So we can write this over 1, and then we could take the c variable, move it to the bottom, to make the negative exponent positive. So this is 1 over c. So we can just write a c variable on the bottom. Now I'm going to show you a trick that you can employ. You don't have to use it, but if it makes sense to you, feel free. So if we move c to the negative 5 on the bottom, it becomes c to the positive 5. And if we move c to the negative 4 to the top, it becomes c to the positive 4. And let's say if you subtract it backwards, instead of doing 4 minus 5 and get negative 1, if you do 5 minus 4, you get positive 1. And so that's a quick and simple way to get the answer. If you like learning multiple ways of doing things, this is for you. But if you like to stick with one way of doing things, stick with the first method. But that's just a shortcut way of getting the same answer. So the final answer for this problem is 7 a to the 4th, 9 b to the 5th times c. So this right here is the final answer. That's as far as we can go in terms of simplifying this expression. By the way, for those of you who are taking algebra next year, when you get a chance, check out the links in the description section below in this video. I'm going to post my algebra playlist, which can help you next year when you take algebra. So feel free to take a look at that when you get a chance. Now let's move on to number 10. Factor the expression shown below. So how can we factor this binomial? A binomial is an algebraic expression that contains two terms. This is one term, that's the second term. If we only had 63x squared, this would be a monomial because mono means one. It's a one-term expression. Let's say if we have 9x cubed plus 5x minus 8x squared. In this case, there's a total of 3 terms. So you would call this a trinomial. Tri meaning 3. In order to factor the expressions shown below, we need to determine the GCF, the greatest common factor. So let's write out the two monomials. Let's ignore the negative sign for now. 63, we can write that as 9 times 7. And x squared is basically x times x. 45 is 9 times 5. And x cubed is basically 3 x variables. So we have a common factor of 9 and a common factor of x squared. So combining that together, the GCF is 9x squared. So now in order to factor the expression, first we need to write the GCF and then write parentheses. So what is 63x squared divided by 9x squared? If we divide these two, x squared divided by x squared is 1. If you subtract the exponents, 2 minus 2 is 0. X raised to the 0 power is 1. In fact, anything raised to the 0 power is 1. 63 divided by 9 is 7. So we're going to get a 7 here. Next, we need to divide these two. So we have negative 45x cubed divided by 9x squared. Negative 45 divided by 9 is negative 5. X cubed divided by x squared, that's going to be 3 minus 2, which is 1. So we can simply write that as negative 5x. So this is our factored expression of the original problem. So this is the answer. Now, if you're not sure, you can always check your answer. To check your work, distribute 9x squared to 7 minus 5x. So if we multiply 9x squared by 7, that will give us 63x squared. And if we multiply 9x squared by negative 5x, we can see that 9 times negative 5 is negative 45. X squared times x is x cubed. So distributing is basically the opposite of factoring in this particular case. Number 11. The diameter of a circle is 8 inches. What is the radius, circumference, and area of the circle? Let's begin with a picture. Let's say this is the center of the circle. The diameter is basically the distance between one end of the circle to the other end, but that segment has to pass through the center of the circle. So that is the diameter of the circle. The radius is basically half of the diameter. The radius is the distance between the center of the circle and any point on the circle. So since the diameter is 8 inches, the radius is going to be half of that. It's going to be 4 inches. Now, once we have the radius, we can easily calculate the circumference of the circle and the area of the circle. The circumference is 2 pi r. So that's going to be 2 pi times 4, which is 8 pi. So that's the exact answer, 8 pi inches. Now, if you're going to plug in pi, I'm going to use the exact value of pi, 3.14159, and some other numbers after that. So 8 pi, if you round it, it's going to be approximately 25.1 inches. So this is the circumference of the circle. Now what about the area? The area is pi r squared. So that's going to be pi times 4 squared, or 16 pi square inches. Now the decimal value for that is approximately 50.265, but I'm going to round it to 3. So 50.3 square inches. So notice that area is in square inches, but circumference is just measured in inches. Number 12. Calculate the area and perimeter of the rectangle shown below. So the length of the rectangle is 8 feet. The width is 5 feet. The area is basically the length times the width. So it's going to be 8 feet times 5 feet. Now 8 times 5 is 40. And if we multiply the units feet by feet, we'll get feet squared. So the area is 40 square feet. Now what about the perimeter? The perimeter of a rectangle is basically 2L plus 2W. If this is 8 feet, that means this side is also 8 feet. And if this is 5, that means this side is also 5. The perimeter is basically the sum of all of the outer edges of the figure. So using the formula, it's going to be twice the length of the rectangle, which is 2 times 8, and 2 times the width, which is 2 times 5. 2 times 8 is 16, and 2 times 5 is 10. So we're going to get 26 feet. So that is the length of the perimeter. So now you know how to find the perimeter and the area of a rectangle. Number 13. What is the volume and surface area of a cylinder with a radius of 8 feet and a height of 12 feet? So let's begin by drawing a picture. So here we have a cylinder. Now granted, my drawing is not perfect, but you can make do with it. The radius is 8 feet and the height is 12 feet. So let's begin with the volume. What is the volume of a cylinder? The volume is going to be the area of the base times the height. Or we can put B times H. Notice that the base is basically the area of a circle. The area of a circle is pi r squared. So the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times the height. So we have the radius, which is 8 feet, and the height is 12 feet. 8 squared is 64. 64 times 12 is 768. So it's 768 pi. And what are the units of volume? The units of volume are cubic feet, whereas area is in square feet. Now, if you want to get the decimal answer for this one, the volume is approximately 2,412.7 cubic feet. So that's the first half of the problem. So now let's talk about finding the surface area of a cylinder. The surface area of a cylinder is basically the area of the base plus the lateral area. As we said before, the area of the base is the circle, pi r squared. But in this case, we need to consider the bottom circle and the top circle. So because we have two circles, it's going to be pi r squared times 2. Now the lateral area is the area around the cylinder. And that's going to be the perimeter of the object times the height. So what is the perimeter of a circle? The perimeter of a circle is basically the circumference of a circle. And we know that the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. So the surface area of a cylinder is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. So let's plug in everything. As we said before, r is 8 and h is 12. So 8 squared is 64. 64 times 2 is 128. 8 times 12 is 96 times 2. That's 192. So if we add 192 and 128, the surface area is going to be 320 pi square feet. So this is the exact answer. But now let's get the rounded answer. So this is approximately 1005.3 square feet. So now you know how to calculate the surface area and the volume of a cylinder. Number 14, divide. So here we have a complex fraction. We have fractions within a fraction. But what this is saying is we have the first fraction, 28 over 36, divided by the second fraction, 35 over 81. Now we still need to modify it. Perhaps you heard of the expression keep, change, flip. We need to keep the first fraction the same. Next, we need to change division to multiplication, and then we need to flip the second fraction, so it becomes 81 over 35. Now, when multiplying fractions, we can multiply across. But if we do that, we're going to get a very big number, and then we're going to have to simplify that big number, which is just going to be a lot of work. So instead of doing it that way, it's best to take the large numbers and break them down to smaller numbers. So 24, we can write that as 7 times 4. 36 is 9 times 4. 81 is 9 times 9. And 35 is 7 times 5. So we could cancel a 7, we could cancel a 9, and we could cancel a 4. So our final answer is going to be 9/5. And so that's it for this problem. As we could see, answer choice D is the right answer. Number 15. What is the value of y in the equation shown below? So we have 3/8 times y is equal to 15. What is the value of y in this case? What should we do? One thing that we could do is multiply both sides by the reciprocal of that fraction. So let's multiply both sides by 8/3. On the left side, the 8's will cancel and the 3's will cancel. So we're just going to get y. So what is 15 times 8/3? You could do 15 times 8 divided by 3, or you could do 15 divided by 3 and then times 8. I prefer to do it that way. So 15 divided by 3 is 5, and 5 times 8 is 40. So therefore, E is the right answer. Number 16. What is the midpoint between the points 2, 3, and -8, 8? The midpoint is going to be the average of the x values and the average of the y values. So this is x1, y1, and the second point is x2, y2. So we need to add up the x values divided by 2. So the first x value is 2, the second one is -8. The first y value is 3, the second y value is 8. So 2 plus -8, that's the same as 2 minus 8. 2 minus 8 is -6. 3 plus 8 is 11. -6 divided by 2 is -3. So this is the answer in its exact form. Now, if you want to, you can convert 11/2 into a decimal. 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. So you can write it as -3, 5.5. So this will be correct too. So that's how you could find the midpoint given 2 points. 17. What is the least common multiple of the two monomials shown below? So how do we find the LCM of the two monomials? First, we need to find the LCM of 6 and 8. So let's write out the multiples of 6. The multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, 24, and so forth. Multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, 32, and so forth. Notice that 24 is a common multiple of 6 and 8, and it is the lowest common multiple of those two numbers. The next multiple, if we continue it, will be 48. Even though 48 is a common multiple of 6 and 8, it is not the lowest common multiple of 6 and 8. So the LCM of 6 and 8 is 24. That is the least common multiple. Now, what is the least common multiple of a and a cubed? It's going to be the larger of the two variables. So it's going to be a cubed. The least common multiple of b squared and b is going to be the larger of the two variables, which is b squared. So it's basically the one with the greatest number of variables. So thus the answer is this. So let me give you another example. Let's say if we have 7 a squared b to the 4th, and let's say, actually let's not choose 7. Let's choose 6 a squared b to the 4th, and 9 a cubed b to the 3rd. So first, what is the least common multiple of 6 and 9? So for 6, we have 6, 12, 18. Multiples of 9 are 9 and 18. So 18 is the LCM of those two numbers. Now, which one has a higher exponent, a squared or a cubed? The answer is a cubed. Now, which one has a higher exponent between these two? B to the fourth or B to the third? It's going to be B to the fourth. So this right here is the LCM of these two monomials. Number 18, solve each inequality and graph the solution on a number line. So let's solve the inequalities first, and then we're going to graph them later. So for the first one, all we need to do is add 7 to both sides. If we do so, -7 plus 7 is 0. So we're going to get y is equal to or greater than -4 plus 7, which is +3. So that's how we could solve the first inequality. For the second one, there's going to be a little bit more work. Let's begin by subtracting both sides by 5. And so we're going to have -2x is greater than -3 minus 5, which is -8. Now, let's divide both sides by -2. Now, here's where we need to be careful. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number, the direction of the inequality changes. So it's going to be x is less than instead of x is greater than. -8 divided by -2 is +4. So that's the solution for the second part. Now, let's graph each inequality on a number line. Let's say this is 0, and 3 is somewhere to the right of 0. So y is equal to or greater than 3. Should we use an open circle, or should we use a closed circle? What would you say? Notice the underline. The underline tells us that y can equal 3. So because it can equal 3, it includes 3. So we need to use a closed circle. Now, should we shade to the left side or to the right side? Notice that y is also greater than 3. So because it can be greater than 3, we need to shade towards the right. So that's how we can graph it on a number line. Now, let's consider the other example. So 4 is to the right of 0. So for this one, where x is less than 4, do we need an open circle or a closed circle? Since we do not have the underline, x cannot equal 4. So we're going to have an open circle. Now, should we shade to the left or to the right? Because x is less than 4, we need to shade towards the left, where the numbers have a lower value. And so now you know how to plot an inequality on a number line. Number 19, what is the value of x in the figure below? So notice that the 4 lines, they form a quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is a 4-sided figure. And the 4 angles inside the quadrilateral, you need to know that it adds up to 360. So that means that 115 plus 83 plus 54 plus x adds up to 360. So let's add up 115 plus 83 plus 54. So that's going to be 252. Now, in order to get the value of x, we need to subtract both sides by 252. And so x is going to be 360 minus 252. So that's going to give us 108. So that is the value of x in the figure below, which means D is the right answer. Number 20. Triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. What is the value of x? Let's call this triangle 1, and let's call this triangle 2. So these are the bases of the triangles, and here we have the heights of the triangles. So we need to set up a proportion. We're going to have 2 fractions separated by an equal sign. On the left, we're going to put the information for triangle 1. On the right, we are going to write the information for triangle 2. Now let's put the base on top, and the information for the heights of the 2 triangles, we're going to put it on the bottom of the fractions. So the base of triangle 1 is 24. The base of triangle 2 is 18. The height of triangle 1 is 16. The height of triangle 2 is x. The purpose of this is so that we set up the proportion correctly. So now we have an equation. We have two fractions separated by an equal sign. How can we solve for x in this situation? What we can do is cross multiply. 16 times 18 is equal to 24 times x. Now, you don't have to multiply 16 by 18 to get the answer. We can rewrite 16 as 4 times 4, 18 as 6 times 3, and 24 as 6 times 4. So notice that we could cancel a 6 and we can cancel a 4. So we could see that x is equal to 3 times 4, which is 12. And so this is the answer. Now, how do we know if we have the right answer? What can we do to make sure that our answer is correct? First, let's write that x is 12 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the ratio of the base to the height of the two triangles, and we're going to write it as a fraction. If the ratios are the same, that tells us that the triangles are similar when x is 12. So the base of the first triangle is 24. The height is 16. To reduce the fraction, we could divide the top number and the bottom number by 8. 24 divided by 8 is 3. 16 divided by 8 is 2. Now let's do the same thing for triangle 2. The base is 18. The height is 12. 18 and 12 are divisible by 6. 18 divided by 6 is 3. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So as we can see, the ratios of the base to the height of each triangle is the same when x is 12. And so this value makes the two triangles similar to each other. So that's how we know that the answer is indeed correct. Now, for those of you who truly value this video, if you want to show your appreciation, one of the best ways you can do so is by subscribing to this channel. And it really doesn't take too long. Just click on that red button at the bottom of the screen, and that's it. By the way, if you decide to do so, don't forget to turn on or click on that notification bell. Now, for those of you who want to support my channel, here's the link to my Patreon page. Also, when you get a chance, check out the links in the description section below this video, because I'm going to post some other resources that you might find helpful. So let's get back to the video. 21. Mary has 5 1/3 pounds of flour. If she used 2 3/4 pounds of flour to make cakes for her guests, how many pounds of flour does she have left? So basically, what we need to do in this problem is subtract. So she had 5 1/3. She used up 2 3/4. So the amount that she's going to have left over is the difference between these two numbers. So how do we go about subtracting mixed numbers? 5 1/3 is basically 5 plus 1/3. 2 3/4 is 2 plus 3 over 4. Now let's distribute the negative sign. So it's 5 plus 1 over 3 minus 2 minus 3 over 4. So what we can do right now is subtract these two numbers. 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. So right now we have 3 plus 1/3 minus 3 over 4. So the next thing that we need to do at this point is combine these two fractions. So we need to get common denominators. I'm going to multiply the second fraction by 3 over 3 and the first one by 4 over 4. This will give me a common denominator of 12. So it's 3 plus 4 over 12 minus 3 times 3 is 9. So now we have 9 over 12. 4 minus 9 is negative 5. So I have 3 minus 5 over 12. Now 3, I'm going to separate it into 2 and 1. Next, I'm going to replace 1 with 12 over 12. because 12 divided by 12 is 1. So now that I have the same denominator, I can subtract the numerators. 12 minus 5 is 7. So I have 2 plus 7 over 12, which gives me the mixed fraction 2 and 7/12. So this is how many pounds of flour Mary has left, which means that B is the right answer. 22. Answer the following questions. Part A. 28 is what percent of 74? So what formula do we need in order to answer this question? Perhaps you've seen this formula. Part divided by whole is equal to the percent over 100. Now, the number that is associated with the word is the part. The number associated with the word of is the whole. So 28 is, therefore 28 is the part. 28 is what percent? So we wish to calculate this, the percentage. So let's put an X there. 28 is what percent of 74? So 74 is the whole. So once we set it up, now we need to cross multiply. So we have 74 times X is equal to 28 times 100. 28 times 100 is basically 2800. Just add the 2 zeros. Now, to get X, we need to divide both sides by 74. So X is going to be 2800 over 74, which is 37.8. So that is the percentage. Now let's move on to part B. What is 35% of 270? So let's start with the formula. Part divided by whole is equal to the percentage divided by 100. So what is 35%? The percentage is 35. And then we have of 270. So of is associated with the whole, so the whole is 270. What is? We're looking for the is portion of the equation, which is the part. So let's cross multiply. So we have 100p is equal to 270 times 35. 270 times 35 is 9,450. Next, let's divide by 100. So P is 94.5. So 94.5 is 35% of 270. So that's what that means. Now what about part C? 45 is 30% of what number? So let's start with the formula. 45 is, so 45 is the part. 30%, we can replace percentage with 30. Of what number? We're looking for the of value. So we're looking for the whole portion of the equation. So we need to calculate W. Let's cross multiply. So here we have 30 times W, and that's equal to 45 times 100. Let's see if we can break this apart. 30 is basically 3 times 10. 45 is 3 times 15, and 100 is 10 times 10. So we could cancel a 10, and we could cancel a 3. So in this case, W is going to be 15 times 10, which is 150. So we can complete the sentence. 45 is 30% of 150. 23. Megan wants to buy a cell phone for 120. If the sales tax is 7%, what is the total amount that Megan will pay for this phone? Now, there's many ways of doing this problem. One way is to find out what 7% of 120 is. A simple way in which you can do so is multiplying 120 by the decimal equivalent of 7%. To convert 7% into a decimal, simply divide that number by 100. 7 divided by 100 is 0.07. So if you multiply 120 by 0.07, you're going to get $8.40. So that's how much she's going to pay in sales tax. To get the total price, we need to add 120 to $8.40. So she's going to pay $128.40. Therefore, C is the right answer. But there's another way in which you can get the same answer. You could use this formula. The new value is equal to the original value multiplied by 1 plus or minus R, where R is the percentage. The new value in this problem would represent the total price that she's going to pay, because the price is going to increase by 7% once you add the taxes. The original price is 120. Now, the tax is going to increase the price, so we're going to use plus R instead of minus R. Now, R is the decimal equivalent of 7%, so that's 0.07. So what we're going to do is multiply 120 by 1.07. I'm not sure this computer's acting up. It's not working the way it should. So if we multiply 120 by 1.07, it's going to give us $128.40. So that's a quick and efficient way to get the answer for a problem like this. So C is the right answer. Number 24. Kelly received a 15% good student discount on her car insurance premiums. If she now pays $204 per month, how much was she paying each month before she received the discount? So what do you think we need to do in this problem? For this problem, it's very helpful to use this formula. The new value is equal to the original value times 1 plus or minus R. So in this case, we have the new value. That is the value of her insurance premiums after the discount has been applied. So the new value is $204. Our goal is to calculate her original insurance premiums, the amount that she was paying before she received the discount. Now, because the discount decreases the price, we're going to use negative R instead of positive R. So what is the decimal equivalent of 15%? If you divide 15 by 100, you're going to get 0.15. So we have 204 is equal to X times 0.85. Now the next thing we need to do is divide both sides by 0.85. So it's going to be 204 divided by 0.85, and X is 240. So this is the amount that Kelly was paying each month before she received the 15% good student discount. So answer choice C is the answer. 25. Sam bought 200 shares of company XYZ for $40 each in 2017. The stock rose by 30% in 2018. By 2019, it was up by 40% from the previous year. What is the total value of Sam's investment in company XYZ in 2019? So right now, in 2017, the price for each share is $40. Now by 2018, the stock price increased by 30% in that year. So if we increase 40 by 30%, what is the new value? So once again, we need to use this equation. The new value is equal to the original value times 1 plus or minus R. So the original value is 40. The percent increase is 30%, which is 0.30. So we need to multiply 40 by 1.3. So by 2018, the stock was worth $52. Now, 1 year later, in 2019, the stock goes up by 40%. So if we increase 52 by 40%, what will we get? So the original value is now 52, and R is going to be 0.40. So multiplying 52 by 1.4 will give us the current stock price of $72.80. Now Sam owns 200 shares of company XYZ, and each share is $72.80. So we need to multiply 200 by 72.80. And so his current investment is $14,560. So that's how much his investment is worth in his company by 2019. 26. The value of a car went from $18,000 in 2018 to $15,900 in 2019. Calculate the percent change during that time period. So we need to use the percent change formula. And so it's equal to the new value minus the original value divided by the original value times 100%. So the new value is $15,900. The original value is $18,000. So we need to divide it by 18,000. And then multiply the result by 100%. So 15,900 minus 18,000, that's negative 2,100. Take that, divide it by 18,000, and you should get negative 0.116 repeating. Multiply that by 100%. And so the answer is going to be negative 11.67, if you want to round it, percent. So it's a percent decrease because the percent change is negative. The value of the car went down from 18,000 to 15,900. And so that's it for this problem. That's the answer. 27. Simplify the algebraic expression shown below. So what we need to do here is we need to distribute and we need to combine like terms. 3 times 4x is 12x. 3 times 5 is 15. Now let's do the same with 7. Let's distribute 7 to 3x plus 6. 7 times 3x is 21x. 7 times 6 is 42. Next, we need to combine like terms. 12 plus 21 is 33. And then we could combine these two. 15 plus 42, that's going to be 57. So the final answer is 33x plus 57. 28. What is the value of x in the equation shown below? So let's do something similar like what we did in the last problem. Let's distribute. Let's distribute the 5 to 2x plus 3. So 5 times 2x is 10x. 5 times 3 is 15. Now let's distribute 4 to 2x plus 1. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times 1 is 4. Now our next step is to combine like terms. So we could combine these two. 8x plus 4x is 12x. And we can combine 4 and 5, which is 9. So now we have 10x plus 15 is equal to 12x plus 9. Next, let's subtract both sides by 10x. And at the same time, we can subtract both sides by 9. So these will cancel, and the 9's will cancel. 15 minus 9 is 6. 12x minus 10x is 2x. So our next step is to divide both sides by 2. So x is going to be 6 divided by 2, which is 3. And so this is the final answer. 29. Convert each decimal into a fraction or a mixed number. So let's start with 0.3. The first thing to do is write it over 1. And then you want to multiply 0.3 by 10 over 10 to get rid of the decimal. 0.3 times 10 is 3. 1 times 10 is 10. So 0.3 is equivalent to 3 over 10 as a fraction. So that's it for the first example. Now what about 0.28? So that number ends in the hundredths place. So what we're going to do is multiply the top and the bottom by 100. 0.28 times 100 is 28. And 1 times 100 is 100. So now we need to reduce the fraction. 100 is 4 times 25. 28 is 4 times 7. So we could cancel the 4 and we get 7 over 25. So 0.28 is 7 over 25. So that's it for the second example. Now let's move on to the next one. How can we convert 4.35 into a fraction? So this is going to be a mixed number. This is 4 plus 0.35. I recommend focusing on the 0.35 part first. So just like the last problem, we're going to multiply this one by 100 over 100. So we're going to get 35 over 100. Now 35 is 7 times 5. 100, we can write that as 20 times 5. And so we could cancel the 5. So 0.35 is 7 over 20. So we have 4 plus 0.35. So that's 4 plus 7 over 20. So we could say that 4.35, let me write that again. So 4.35 is going to be 4 and 7 over 20 as a mixed number. Now let's move on to part 4. What is 0.4 repeating? 0.4 repeating is simply 4 over 9. That's it. Part 5, 0.23 repeating. This is going to be 23 over 99. So let's say if we have 0.317 repeating, this is going to be 317 over 999. Now you may have to check to see if you can reduce it, but we can't reduce this fraction. So that's what you can do if you have repeating decimals. Number 30. Which of the following statements is false? So is 2 a natural number? So natural numbers are basically whole numbers, but they start with 1. So 1 is a natural number, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're basically positive whole numbers. So 2 is a natural number, so that's a true statement. We're looking for the statement that's false. What about 0? Is 0 a whole number? Whole numbers are basically integers that are positive, including 0. So 0 is considered a whole number. Now, -7, is that an integer? Integers are whole numbers, but they could be positive or negative. So -3 is an integer, -2, -1, 0, and the positive whole numbers are integers as well. What about 3 over 7? Is 3 over 7 an irrational number? Well, first, what is a rational number, and how is that different from an irrational number? A rational number is any number that can be put into a fraction using whole numbers. So 2 over 3 is a rational number. 0.5 is a rational number because 0.5 is 1 over 2. 7 is a rational number because that's 14 over 2. So any type of integer is a rational number, or any decimal number that ends, let's say like 0.35, we can put that into a fraction. So that's a rational number. So D is a false statement. 3 over 7 is a rational number, not an irrational number. An example of an irrational number would be the square root of 2. The square root of 2 is basically 1.4142136, and the numbers after the decimal, they keep on going. You can't put this in a fraction using whole numbers. You can't write it like 2 over 3 or 5 over 6 or something like that. And so that's why it's irrational. You can't write it in terms of a fraction using whole numbers. So the square root of 2 is irrational. Pi is irrational. The number e is irrational. What about the square root of 25? This simplifies to an integer, 5. So this would be a rational number, not an irrational number. So E is a true statement. So D is the correct answer for this problem. Number 31. The square root of 80 is closest to which of the following whole numbers? What would you say? What is the square root of 81? The square root of 81 is 9. So therefore, the square root of 80 has to be close to 9. The exact answer is the square root of 80 is 8.9443. That's the rounded answer. But nevertheless, 9 is the closest one. So you need to be familiar with the perfect squares. 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100, 11 squared is 121. So that's how you can answer a question like this if you see it on the exam. Number 32. Find the next 3 terms in each list. So let's start with the first list. The first term is 7, the second is 13, the third term is 19, the fourth is 25. What's the next term in this sequence? What is the pattern? So going from 7 to 13, notice that we need to add 6. If you subtract 13 by 7, you get 6. If you subtract 19 by 13, you get 6. So there is a common difference of 6. This type of sequence is called an arithmetic sequence. Because to get the next number, you need to add by a constant number. So 25 plus 6 will give us 31. 31 plus 6 will give us 37. 37 plus 6 will give us 43. So these are the next 3 terms in the sequence. Now let's move on to the second list. So we have the numbers 3, 6, 12, 24. So what's the next number? Now if we subtract 6 by 3, we'll get a common difference of 3. If we subtract 12 by 6, we'll get a common difference of 6. And if we subtract 12 by 24, we'll get a common difference of 12. So that's one way to do it. Now we could see a pattern here, but it's easier if we divide instead of subtract. If we divide 6 by 3, notice that we get 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. If we divide 12 by 6, we will get 2. And if we divide 24 by 12, we would get 2. So in this case, instead of adding by a common number or a constant number, we are multiplying by a constant number. And so this is what is known as a geometric sequence. The common ratio is 2. So to get the next number, it's going to be 24 times 2, which is 48. And then 48 times 2, which is 96. And then 96 times 2, which is 192. So these are the next 3 terms in the geometric sequence of list 2. Now what about list 3? The first term is 5, the second term is 7, the third term is 11, next is 19, the fifth term is 35. So what pattern do we see here? Is it a geometric sequence or an arithmetic sequence or even something else. Let's see if it's a geometric sequence. Let's divide the second term by the first term. This will give us 1.4. Now, if we divide the third term, 11, by the second term, 7, this will give us 1.57. So these are not the same. It is not a geometric sequence. Let's see if it's an arithmetic sequence. The second term minus the first term will give us plus 2. Now, if we take the third term subtracted by the second term, 11 minus 7 is plus 4. Now, if we take 19 and subtract it by 11, that's going to give us plus 8. And 35 minus 19, that's going to give us plus 16. So even though this is not an arithmetic sequence, because we're not adding by a constant number, there is a pattern in the numbers that we're adding. The pattern is that these numbers are geometric, because to go from 2 to 4, you need to multiply by 2. To go from 4 to 8, you need to multiply by 2. So to go from 8 to 16, you got to multiply by 2. So if we multiply by 2 again, the next number that we're going to add is 32, because 16 times 2 is 32. And then if we repeat that, 32 times 2 is going to be 64. And then let's repeat that one more time. 64 times 2 is going to be 128. So, since we added 16 to 19 to get to 35, next we need to add 32 to 35 to get the next number, which is 67. Then, to get the next number, it's going to be 67 plus 64, which is 131. And then to get the last number, it's going to be 131 plus 128, which is 259. So based on the previous pattern, these will be the next three numbers in the sequence. 33. Calculate the mean, median, mode, and range of the list of numbers shown below. So the first thing we should do is arrange the numbers in increasing order. So the first number is 3. Next after that is a 7. And then there's 2 8s. And then after 8, we have 10. And then 12. And then after that is a 14, 15, 17, and the highest number is 20. So what is the mean of the numbers that we have here? The mean is basically the sum of all the numbers divided by the number of numbers that we have. So we need to add up 3, 7, 8, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 17, and I'm running out of space. I'm going to put it on top here, 20. So n is the number of data points in our list. So there's 10 numbers in the list. So n is 10. So go ahead and add those 10 numbers. The sum of those 10 numbers is 114. And if we divide that by the 10 numbers, this will give us 11.4. So that is the mean in this example. The mean is the same as the average. Just add up all the numbers and divide it by the number of numbers that you have. So that's it for the first part of this problem. Now, what about the median? The median is basically the middle number. So if we draw a line right in the middle, we're going to have 5 numbers on the left, 5 numbers on the right. So if we cancel the first and the last, and then the next 2, and keep this up, we're going to get 2 numbers in the middle, 10 and 12. And so the median is going to be the average of those 2 numbers in the middle. So we need to add them up and divide by 2. 10 plus 12 is 22. And 22 divided by 2 is 11. So therefore, the median is 11 in this example. Now, what about the mode? The mode is the number that occurs most frequently in our list. So which number has the highest frequency? Notice that 8 appears twice. The number 8 has a frequency of 2. So the mode is 8. Now what about the range? The range is the difference between the highest value and the lowest value. The highest value is 20. The lowest value is 3. 20 minus 3 is 17. So that's the range in this example. So now you know how to calculate the mean, median, mode, and range given a list of numbers. Number 34. Which of the following statements is false? So go ahead and take a minute to work on this problem. So what we have here is a box and whisker plot. This number here is the minimum. This is the maximum. Now, this value here is known as the first quartile. This value here is the second quartile. And this is the third quartile. So let's analyze each statement. The median is 25. The median is equal to the second quartile. And the second quartile is at 25. So therefore, A is a true statement. What about B? The range is 30. The range is the difference between the highest value and the lowest value. The highest value, as we can see here, is 45. The lowest value, the minimum, is 15. 45 minus 15 is 30. And so B is also a true statement. The range is 30. Now let's move on to part C. The interquartile range is 15. The interquartile range, also abbreviated as IQR, is the difference between the third quartile and the first quartile. The third quartile, we could see that it's at 35. The first quartile is 20. And so 35 minus 20 is 15. So C is a true statement. Now what about D? The mean is 27. From a box and whisker plot, you can't accurately determine where the mean is. There's not enough data. So therefore, D is the false statement, which is what we're looking for. So D is the correct answer. Now looking at answer choice E, there's not enough data to determine the mode either. But since we said that, this is a true statement. But D is the correct answer for this problem. By the way, for those of you who may want more example problems on box and whisker plots or any other topic that was mentioned in this video, you can search my videos on YouTube. So if you type in box and whisker plots organic chemistry tutor in the YouTube search bar, then you should see videos that I've created come up that's related to that topic. So feel free to take a look at that if you need more example problems on this topic. 35. Factor completely. So how can we do this? How can we factor 2160? 2160 is basically 216 times 10. 216 is 36 times 6. And 10, we can write that as 5 times 2. Now 36 is 9 times 4. And 6 is 3 times 2. So we want to break these numbers into prime numbers. So 3, 2, 5, those are prime numbers. 9 is a composite number because we can break that into 3 and 3. 4 is also a composite number. A prime number can only be broken down into itself and 1. So that's why 2 and 3 are prime numbers. So now what we need to do is put these in order. So notice that we have a total of 4 2's. So that's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And we have a total of 3 3's. So that's going to be 3 times 3 times 3. And we have a total of, we have 1 5. So we can write this as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and then times 3 times 3 times 3, times 5. A to the third is basically A times A times A, like 3 A's multiplied to each other. B to the fourth is 4 B's multiplied to each other. So this is our answer in its expanded form. Now this is equivalent to this answer. We had 4 2's, so we can write that as 2 to the fourth. We had 3 3's, so 3 to the third, 1 5. And the 3 A's, we can leave it as A to the third, and then times B to the fourth. So we can condense our answer and leave it like this if we want to. 36. Describe each pair of angles as vertical angles, alternate exterior angles, alternate interior angles, corresponding angles, or supplementary angles. So let's look at the first one. Angles 1 and 4. What is the relationship between those two angles? Angle 1 is equal to angle 4. These two angles are congruent, and they're known as vertical angles. Now what about the second one? Angles 1 and 8. How would you describe these two? And what is the word that corresponds to them? So those two angles are known as alternate exterior angles. Notice that they're not between the two parallel lines. They're on the outside of the two parallel lines. So they are on the exterior. And notice that they are on alternate sides of the transversal. Line K is the transversal because it cuts through the two parallel lines. And as you can see, 1 and 8, 1 is on the left side of the transversal, 8 is on the right side. So they are on alternate sides of the transversal. So therefore, angle 1 and 8, they're congruent, and they are alternate exterior angles. Now what about the next one? Angles 4 and 5. Now notice that these two angles are on the interior of the parallel lines, line L and line M. And notice that they are also on alternate sides of the transversal. 4 is on the right side and 5 is on the left side of line K. So those two angles are alternate interior angles. So angle 4 is congruent to angle 5. They are alternate interior angles. Now what about the next one? 2 and 6. So here's 2 and here's 6. Notice that they are on the same side of the transversal, and they're both above the two parallel lines. It turns out that those two angles are congruent to each other, and they are known as corresponding angles. Now the last one, angles 1 and 2. What would you say about those two angles? So here's 1, here's 2. Notice that they form a linear pair. They add up to a straight angle, or 180 degrees. So angle 1 plus angle 2 is going to equal 180. So those two angles are said to be supplementary angles. Anytime two angles add up to 180, they're supplementary. If two angles add up to 90, they are complementary. So these are some things you want to keep in mind. 37. Calculate the volume, lateral area, and surface area of a cone with a radius of 5 centimeters and a height of 12 centimeters. So let's start with the volume. The volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared times the height. So the radius is 5 centimeters and the height is 12 centimeters. 5 squared is 25. 25 times 12 is 300. 300 divided by 3 is 100. So it's 100 pi cubic centimeters. And as a decimal value, that's approximately 314.16 cubic centimeters. So that's the volume of the cone. Now let's move on to the next part. Let's calculate the lateral area of the cone. In order to find the lateral area, we need to calculate something known as the slant height. Some textbooks will refer to it as S, others as L. I'm used to seeing it as L. But notice that we have this right triangle, where this is the radius, this is the height, and this is the slant height. So we know that according to the Pythagorean theorem, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. In this case, c is the slant height. R could be a, b could be h. So we need to find a slant height using this formula first. So it's going to be the square root of 5 squared plus 12 squared. 5 squared is 25, 12 squared is 144. Adding the two together gives us 169, and the square root of 169 is 13. So the slant height is 13 centimeters. So now that we have the slant height, we can calculate the lateral area. The lateral area is basically, for a cone, it's 1/2 times the perimeter times the slant height. The perimeter is basically the circumference of the circle, which is 2 pi r. So it's 1/2 times 2 pi r times L. So half of 2 is 1. So the lateral area is simply pi r L. So it's pi times 5 times 13. So in this case, it's going to be 65 pi square centimeters. 65 pi is approximately 204.2 square centimeters. And so that is the lateral area for this particular cone. Now let's calculate the total surface area. The total surface area is the sum of the lateral area plus the base. So we saw that the lateral area was pi r L. The area of the base is basically the area of the circle, which is pi r squared. So it's going to be pi times 5 times 13 plus pi times 5 squared. 5 times 13 is 65 pi. 5 squared is 25. So the surface area is going to be 90 pi square centimeters. So let's get the decimal value for that. So this is approximately 282.7 square centimeters. So now you know how to calculate the volume, surface area, and lateral area of a cone. 38. What is the distance between the points -2, 3 and -10, 3? You need to be familiar with the distance formula. So it's x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now, x1 is -2, y1 is 3. For the second point, this is going to be x2, y2. Now, x2, the second x value, we said it's -10. x1, the first x value, is -2. y2 is -3 minus y1, which is +3. So what is -10 minus -2? This becomes -10 plus 2, which is -8. And -3 minus 3 is -6. -8 squared. -8 times -8 is +64. Now what about -6 squared? -6 times -6 is 36. And 64 plus 36 is 100. The square root of 100 is 10. So the distance between the 2 points is 10. So answer choice C is the correct answer. 39. Calculate the volume and surface area of the rectangular prism shown below. Let's start with the volume. The volume is simply the length times the width times the height. So we can say this is the length, we'll call this the width, and we'll say 3 is the height. So the volume is going to be 12 times 8 times 3. So 12 times 8 is 96. 96 times 3 is 288. So the volume of the rectangular prism is 288 cubic inches. Now what about the surface area? The surface area of a rectangular prism is 2 times LW plus 2 times WH plus 2 times LH, because there's 6 surfaces of the prism. So in this example, L is 12, W is 8, and H is 3. So 2 times 12 times 8, that's 192. 2 times 8 times 3, that's 48. And 2 times 12 times 3 is 72. So adding these three numbers together will give us 312. So it's 312 cubic inches. I mean, not cubic inches, but square inches, since we're dealing with area. The volume will be in cubic units. So that's the surface area of the rectangular prism. That's how you could find it. Number 40. It takes Karen 6 hours to make 15 cakes. How many cakes can she make in 14 hours? In order to solve this, we need to set up a proportion between time and the number of cakes that she can make. So let's put two fractions separated by an equal sign. In 6 hours, she can make 15 cakes. How many cakes can she make in the time of 14 hours? Let's cross multiply. So we have 6 times x is equal to 14 times 15. Now we can write 6 as 3 times 2. And 14 is 7 times 2. 15, we can write that as 5 times 3. Now we could cancel a 3 on both sides, and we can cancel a 2. So on the left side, all we have is x. And on the right side, 7 times 5. 7 times 5 is 35. So she can make 35 cakes in a time period of 14 hours. So C is the right answer. 41. City ABC is 10 inches from city XYZ on a map. The map scale shows that every 3 inches correspond to a distance of 90 miles. How far is city ABC from city XYZ? So once again, we need to set up a proportion between the distance in inches and the distance in miles. So let's write two fractions separated by an equal sign. So a distance of 3 inches corresponds to a distance of 90 miles, based on the map scale. So if city ABC is 10 inches from city XYZ, how much is that in mileage if we use the map scale? So we need to cross multiply. We have 3 times x, and that's going to be equal to 10 times 90, which is 900. So dividing both sides by 3, we have 900 divided by 3, which is 300. So the two cities are 300 miles apart, which means B is the right answer. 42. Lisa deposits $25,000 into an annuity that pays her a simple interest of 7% annually. What is the total amount of interest that Lisa will receive in 5 years if she makes no deposits or withdrawals? So for this problem, we need to use the simple interest formula. I is the interest received, P is the principal, R is the interest rate as a decimal, and T is the time in years. So the principal is the amount that she puts in the annuity. So it's her $25,000 deposit. Now what is 7% as a decimal? We need to divide 7 by 100. 7 divided by 100 is 0.07. And we want to calculate the total interest received in 5 years. So it's 25,000 times 0.07 times 5. So in the course of 5 years, she's going to receive $8,750 in interest payments. So that's it for 42. Number 43. 4 times the sum of a number and 5 is 7 less than 13 times the number. What is the number? So in this problem, we need to convert the sentence into an equation. So first, let's focus on the expression, the sum of a number and 5. The number, which we currently don't know its value, we're going to call that x. So the sum of that number and 5 is x plus 5. And then we have 4 times the sum. So this is going to be 4 times x plus 5. Is means equals. And then we have 13 times the number. So that's 13 times x, and it's 7 less than 13 times the number. So 13x minus 7. So this is the equation that we have. Now we need to solve. Let's begin by distributing the 4. So we have 4 times x and 4 times 5, which is 20. Now, let's subtract both sides by 4x, and let's add 7 to both sides. So these two will cancel. 20 plus 7 is 27. 13 minus 4 is 9. Now let's divide both sides by 9. 27 divided by 9 is 3. So the number is equal to 3. 44. The ratio of two complementary angles is 5 to 13. What is the measure of the smaller angle? So let's say that the two angles are x and y. Complementary angles must add to 90. Now let's say x is a small angle, y is the large angle. The ratio of x to y has to be 5 to 13. So x divided by y is 5 divided by 13. So now we need to solve for x. So what do you think we need to do? In the second equation, let's cross multiply. So we're going to have 13x is equal to 5y. Dividing both sides by 5, we can get an expression for y. So y is going to be 13x over 5. Now what we're going to do is we're going to replace y in the first equation with 13x over 5. So it's x plus 13 over 5 times x is equal to 90. Now to get rid of the fraction, I recommend multiplying everything by 5. So it's going to be 5x, and then once we multiply this by 5, the 5's will cancel, giving us 13x. 9 times 5 is 45. So 90 times 5 is 450. If we add 5x and 13x, that's going to be 18x. So dividing both sides by 18, we're going to have 450 over 18 is 25. So 25 is the smaller of the two angles. The larger angle is going to be 90 minus 25, which is 65. But the answer we're looking for is the smaller of the two angles. So it's 25 degrees. 45. Company ABC sells a 16-ounce bottle of orange juice for $4.99, and company XYZ sells a 12-ounce bottle of orange juice for $3.99. Which is the better buy? In order to determine which one is the better buy, we need to calculate the unit rate for each item. And we want to see which one has the lowest cost per ounce. So for company ABC, they're charging $4.99 for a 16-ounce bottle. So dividing the two numbers, this works out to a cost of 31 cents per ounce. And of course, this is a rounded value. Now, for company XYZ, they're charging $3.99 for a 12-ounce bottle. Dividing those two numbers, we see that the cost per ounce of juice is 33 cents, approximately. So therefore, this one is the more expensive item because for each ounce of juice we're paying more. This one is the better value. So company ABC offers the better deal. 46. What is the measure of angle 2 in the figure below? And we're given the values of angles 1 and 2, but in terms of x. Now looking at the picture, we can see that these two angles form a linear pair. They add up to 180. They are supplementary angles. So we can write angle 1 plus angle 2 is equal to 180. Now, let's replace angle 1 with 12x plus 9. And let's replace angle 2 with 9x plus 3. Now let's combine like terms. So we have 12x plus 9x, that's 21x, and 9 plus 3 is 12. Now let's subtract both sides by 12. So 180 minus 12 is 168. So dividing both sides by 21, we can see that 168 divided by 21 is 8. So x is 8. So now that we have the value of x, we could determine the measure of angle 2 using that expression. So angle 2 is going to be 9 times 8 plus 3. 9 times 8 is 72, and 72 plus 3 is 75. So C is the right answer. 47. What is the slope of the line that passes through the points 2, 7 and negative 3, 4? To find the slope of the line given 2 points, we could use this formula. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 2 is x1, y1 is 7, x2 is negative 3, and y2 is 4. So it's going to be 4 minus 7 over negative 3 minus positive 2. 4 minus 7 is negative 3. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. When you divide two negative numbers together, you're going to get a positive result. So the slope of this line is going to be 3 over 5. Number 48. Graph the equations shown below. So let's start with the first one. X is equal to 2. How can we graph this equation? This is basically a vertical line at x equals 2. That's all you need to do. Now, what is the slope of this line? The slope of a vertical line is undefined. You can't calculate the slope for that. Now, what about the graph y equals 3? So to plot this one, all we need is basically a horizontal line at y equals 3. Now, what is the slope of a horizontal line? A horizontal line has a slope of 0. A vertical line would be like a number divided by 0, which would make the fraction undefined. Now, what about number 3? So for this one, we have a linear equation in slope-intercept form. So it's y is equal to 3 over 2x minus 4. What is the slope and the y-intercept given this equation? Now this is in the form y is equal to mx plus b. So m is the slope, which is 3 over 2. The y-intercept, that's your b value, that's negative 4. So let's go ahead and graph this function. So we're going to start by plotting the y-intercept, which is at negative 4 on the y-axis. Then we're going to use the slope to get the next point. So the slope is the rise over the run. So starting from the y-intercept, we're going to go up 3 and then run 2 units to the right. So if we go up 3, that'll take us to the y value, negative 1, and then 2 to the right. Then let's repeat the process one more time. Let's go up 3 over 2. So the next point will be 4, comma 2. And after that, just connect these points with a straight line. So that's how we can plot a linear equation in slope-intercept form. That's how we can graph it. Now, let's move on to the last example. So this is in standard form. It's in ax plus by equals c form. So for this format, it helps if you find the x and y intercept. Let's start by finding the x-intercept. To do so, replace y with 0 and solve for x. So 4 times 0 is 0, so we're left with 3x is equal to 12. Dividing both sides by 3, we get x is equal to 4. So the x-intercept is 4, comma 0. X is 4, y is 0. Now, to find the y-intercept, let's replace x with 0 and solve for y. So 3 times 0 is 0, so we can get rid of that. So we have negative 4y is equal to 12. Dividing both sides by negative 4, we get y is 12 divided by negative 4, which is negative 3. So we get the point 0, negative 3. Now all we need to do is plot the intercepts. So let's travel 4 units to the right and 3 units down. So the y-intercept is at 0, negative 3, and the x-intercept is at 4, 0. And just connect these 2 points with a straight line, and that's how you can graph this equation. So now you know how to find the x and y intercepts, and you also know how to determine the slope and the y-intercept of a linear equation in slope-intercept form. 49. The base and height of the square pyramid is 12 centimeters and 8 centimeters respectively. Calculate the volume and surface area of the square base pyramid. By the way, for those of you who need help with the triangular pyramid, just type in triangular pyramid organic chemistry tutor on YouTube, and you can get the help that you need on that. So let's focus on this problem. The volume of the square pyramid is 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. Now the area of the base is basically the side length squared, where the side length is basically lowercase b. So the volume is going to be 1/3 times the side length squared times the height. So the side length of the square is 12. We need to square it, and then the height is 8. 12 squared is 144. If we divide that by 3, that's 48. 48 times 8 is 384. So the volume of the square pyramid is 384 cubic centimeters. So that's the answer for the first part. Now let's calculate the surface area. The surface area of the pyramid is basically the area of the base plus 1/2 of the perimeter of the base times the slant height. So we know the area of the base is b squared. The perimeter is going to be the sum of the 4 sides of the square, which is b plus b plus b plus b. So that's 4b. So we get b squared plus 2bl. Now some textbooks will have s for the slant height instead of l. So you can put s if you want. So this is the formula that we need. The only thing we're missing is the slant height. The slant height is right here. So looking at that triangle, we have the height, the slant height, and 1/2 of the base. We know the height is 8. The base is 12, or the side length of the base. So b over 2 is 12 divided by 2, which is 6. So now we need to calculate L. So 6 squared plus 8 squared equals L squared. 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64. If we take the square root of both sides, that will give us L. 36 plus 64 is 100, and the square root of 100 is 10. So L is 10. So now at this point we have everything that we need. So the surface area is going to be b squared, which is 12 squared, plus 2b times L, where L is 10. 12 squared is 144. 12 times 10 is 120, times 2, that's 240. 144 plus 240 is 384. So the surface area of the square-based pyramid is going to be 384 square centimeters. Number 50. Kristen has $64 in savings. She receives $17 per week for allowance. How many weeks will it take for her to reach a total savings of $370? So it's important to understand that every week her savings is increasing by $17. So we have an arithmetic sequence or a linear equation. Let's use the linear equation formula in slope-intercept form. What is the slope and what is the y-intercept? The slope is the amount of money, or it's the amount that her savings is increasing every week. Every week her savings will go up by $17. So the slope is 17. X is the variable, that's the number of weeks. The y-intercept is basically her savings during week 0, so to speak. The y-intercept is the y value when x is 0. In this case, when w is 0, it's going to be how much savings she had, which is the amount she had to begin with. So b is 64. And s will be the same as y. That's going to represent the total savings after w weeks have passed. So we want to know how many weeks it will take for her to reach a savings of 370. So let's replace s with 370. And let's solve for w. So let's subtract both sides by 64. 370 minus 64 is 306. Next, let's divide both sides by 17. 306 divided by 17 is 18. So it's going to take her 18 weeks to reach a savings of $370. So answer choice D is the right answer. 51. Point A is located at -3, 4 on an xy coordinate system. Find the new location of point A after each of the following transformations have occurred. So let's draw a picture first. So point A is at -3, 4. So that's going to be right here. So where is point A going to be after it's been reflected over the x-axis? So this is x, this is y. When it reflects over the x-axis, we're going to have to change the y value from 4 to -4. So right now A is at -3, 4. The x value will be the same, but the y value will change to -4. So this is going to be our new A value. Now what about part 2? Reflection over the y-axis. So in this case, it's going to move in this direction. So this time, the y value will stay the same, but the x value will change. So this is our new A value. Now what about reflection over the origin? So it's going to go towards this quadrant. Both x and y is going to change. So x is going to be +3, but y is going to be -4. So it's 3 -4. And that's going to be the new A value when it's reflected over the origin. Now what about if the graph is rotated 90 degrees clockwise in the direction of the clock? So A is going to be in this quadrant now. So imagine basically taking the axes and spinning it this way. So notice that the y-axis will now become the x-axis here. You're going to rotate it. So A is 4 units along the y-axis, and now it's going to be 4 units along the x-axis. And A was 3 units along the x, now it's going to be 3 units along the y. And x and y will be both positive. So what we're going to do is, to find a new coordinates, we're going to switch x and y. So it's going to be 4, 3. X is 4, y is 3. And because we know it's in this quadrant, both x and y have to be positive. So this will be the new a value after we rotate the entire graph 90 degrees clockwise. Now what about if we translate the graph, or rather the point, 4 units to the right and 2 units up? So 4 units to the right, we need to increase the x value by 4. And up 2 units, we need to increase the y value by 2. So the new point will be 1, 6, which will be somewhere up here, which I ran out of space, but 1, 6 is somewhere in this region. So we'll call it A prime. But that's where it's going to be. So that's it for this problem. So now you know how to perform these types of transformations if you're tested on it.